Hey everyone, how's it going? Forrest here again with another installment of my complete analysis of all 389 Bach chorale harmonizations. We're going to be looking at Gelobet seist du Jesu Christ today, which translates to Praise be to you, Jesus Christ. This is a really fascinating chorale. Definitely some modal influence here because of all of the plagal cadences. And also just the flirtation with C major despite being in the key of G major. All in all, the harmony more or less functions the way that it's supposed to. And actually, as far as the modal chorales are concerned, or the ones that have more modal influence, this one was probably the easiest to analyze. Everything was very clear-cut, straightforward. Even the modulation points I'm very confident about, so let's go ahead and hop into the analysis. So we start off with a G major triad in root position. We have a passing tone in the bass, and then we have E, C, E, and G. That's a C major triad over E, or 4/6 chord. Another passing tone in the bass. Then we have another G major triad in root position. It's a 1 chord passing tone in the alto. And then we have D, A, F sharp, and A. It's a root position D major triad, or a 5 chord. We have a leap up in the tenor, but those are that's still a chord tone, so we don't need to mark it. And then we have E, B, E, and G. That is an E minor triad in root position. And if we look ahead to the next measure, let me mark that passing tone real quick. We have a perfect authentic cadence not in the key of G major, but in the key of C major. This is one of those cadences where it's kind of sprung on us really quickly, and there isn't vocabulary that you learn about in your harmony textbook that prepares you for cadences on chords other than 1, 5, or 6. But to me, it sounds like the tonic changes. We have a C being highlighted in both voices, so I think this is just a very quick modulation to C, which continues after the cadence, which makes me feel like it is more of a modulation than some weird cadence. But right here, this C major triad, C, E, G, and C, it might be a 4 chord in the key of G major, but in the key of C major, it's a tonic triad. And then we have a skip down in the tenor. It's a chord tone, so we don't need to analyze it. G, B, G, and D. That is a root position G major triad, but we know it's a dominant because of the F natural as opposed to the F sharp that's diatonic to the key of G major. So this is just a 1-5-1 cadence that's sprung on us really quickly because we had been hearing G major pretty much up until the cadence. Okay, looking ahead, we have a perfect authentic cadence next in the key of G major. So we're looking basically for a return to F sharp rather than F natural. So here's F natural, and here's F sharp. So I think the modulation is either going to happen on this beat or on this beat. We'll see how the analysis works out. So E, E, G, and B. Depending on how you look at it, I guess that would be a 3 chord in root position, an E minor triad, but E, E, A, and C, yeah, that would be a second inversion A minor chord. That wouldn't really work the way that we expect them to, so I think this is just a 3 chord. And then we go to D, F natural, B, and D. That is a B diminished triad in first inversion, or 7-6 in the key of C major. And then we get C, G, C, and E. That's a root position C major triad. And I think because we have F sharp in the bass on the next beat, this is our return to G major, as C major is now 4 in the key of G major. And that makes sense because the next chord we get is F sharp, D, A, and D. That is a D major triad over F sharp. So that would be a 5-6 chord, passing 7th in the soprano. Then we have G, D, G, and B. That is a tonic triad in root position, so just a 1 chord. Gets inverted on this beat. And then we have D, C, F sharp, and A. I'll call it a 5-7 chord. And then we have a 1 chord. Actually, you know what? No, I will call it a 5-7 chord. Why not? He does this suspension where the 7th gets introduced. I'll put it in parentheses because it's not happening on the beat, it's happening after the fact, and it's a complete triad regardless of the C, so we'll put the 7 in parentheses, why not? Okay, so we have a perfect authentic cadence. Okay, looking ahead to the next cadence, we have a D major, a cadence on D major. To me, this sounds like a perfect authentic cadence. It was close. It sounded like a half cadence at first, but there was like hints of perfect authentic because of the use of C sharp. All in all, I do think this is a perfect authentic cadence because the key continues after the cadence very similarly to how the key continued after the cadence here, after the first phrase. So here we have B, G, D, and G. Another G major triad, but this time it's in first inversion, passing tone in the alto. Then we have A, F sharp, and C. It's an F sharp diminished triad in first inversion, 7-6. And then we have G, D, G, and B, another root position triad. And here we have 3 voices moving, but that would just be an A, C, G, and C. That would just be an incomplete 2 chord. I don't think it really makes a difference. I think we just have 3 passing tones going on. And then we have B, B, G, and D. That's another tonic triad, but this time it's in first inversion. Passing tone in the bass. And then we have D, D, F sharp, and A. That would be a D major triad in root position or a 5 chord. Then we have some passing tones in the alto and the bass. And then we have B, D, D, and G. That is a G major triad over B. And I think this is where we modulate because we get C sharp right at the end. And again, similarly to the previous, or to the first phrase rather, we have a modulation pretty much right in time for the cadence. So I think that there is some, there's definitely some parallels between the first and second and the second and third phrases and how they relate to one another. So we do move to the key of D major here, at least the way that I hear it. And this is now 4-6 rather than it being 1-6. And then it turns into 5-3 on this beat. Actually, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that because we have F sharp here. That would be turning it into a 7th chord. It's not a complete triad at that point. It would be a 7th chord. And well, actually, if it's 4-7, I suppose that could be... never mind. I'm just not even going to bother analyzing it. We'll just say that that's a passing 7th. Then we have A, C sharp, and E. That's a root position A major triad, which would be 5 in the key of D major. Passing 7th in the tenor. And then we cadence on D major, D, F sharp, A, and D. Just a perfect authentic cadence. Okay, we have a longer phrase here. Then we look ahead, and we have a half cadence this time. And the reason why, okay, so we have 2 different cadences here, both using a D major triad as the final chord of the cadence, the chord that we are cadencing on. The difference between these two, and the one that makes me feel like this one is a half cadence just by sight, is the fact that we are not cadencing with the tonic in the soprano right here. Also, C's become natural here, but if I'm just, or even before that, but even if I'm thinking about just visual cues, the fact that we have D in the soprano here and A in the soprano here, I know that this one is probably a half cadence because half cadences often have a non-tonic tone in the soprano. Not always, but I found a lot in the chorales that we've been analyzing so far that half cadences seldom have the tonic of the chord in the soprano. Okay, so let's move on. So I think we're going to modulate in and around this area. when the C sharps start to disappear. My guess is on this beat, but we'll see. D, F sharp, A, and D. It's another D major triad. We have some passing tones in the lower voices as well. Then we have F sharp, A, D, and A. It's another D major triad, but this time it's in first inversion. Some passing tones. A, C sharp, and A. That's an A major triad in root position, but no third. We get it on the next beat. This is where it turns into a first inversion 5 chord. And we would expect that to go to 1, especially a 5-6 chord. D, D, F sharp, and A. There's our 1 chord. And because we get C on the next beat here, I think this is where we modulate to G major. 1 is now 5, which is really cool because we see a modulation at the exact same metric point after the cadence as we do after the first phrase, right? Because we get it on beat 3 of the following measure. We get it on beat 3 of the following measure. So that's how I know that we have like a really solid analysis and there's intention behind the way that he composed this, like there's structure to the form. Whether it was intentional or whether he felt it because there was structure to it. And just sort of a comment on the quality of the chorale. So then we have B, D, G, and B. That is a tonic triad. And remember, the tonic is G major now in first inversion, so 1-6. Then we have A, E, A, and C. And if we look ahead, we have a lot of activity in these voices. So we're going to try and analyze a lot of these vertical sonorities because a lot of them end up working out, believe it or not. So this is an A minor triad in root position. So that would be a 2 chord in the key of G major. We then have some neighbor tones, some passing tones, some suspensions, B, D, G, and B. That'd be a passing 1-6 chord. And then we get C, E, G, and A. That would be another A minor chord, but this time it's A minor 7, and it's in first inversion, so 2-6-5. And then we have some more passing tones, neighbor tones, suspensions, different non-chord tones. But here we have D, D, F sharp, and A, which is exactly what 2-6-5 wants to go to. And then we have E, B, E, E, D, E, and G. That would be some type of 6 chord. It would be a 6-7 chord without the 5th, and that's okay. Then we get some chords on the next beat, or some passing tones, some other non-chord tones on the next beat. We get F sharp, C, A, and A. That'd be an F sharp diminished triad in root position. Now, the thing is that your harmony textbook, or at least my harmony textbook, it said 7th chords, seven chords are usually voiced in an inversion. You usually see them in first inversion because that way you don't have to double the root. Because in root position triads, or a root position triad is usually voiced in such a way that the root of the chord is doubled. And I found that Bach has a much more elegant way of solving these, in the sense that sometimes the chords are inverted, sometimes they're not, and there's really no regularity to the way he doubles the chords or he doubles the notes. So it's interesting. He's not, he doesn't have the same kinds of constraints, like doubling conventions don't really exist. I'd have to look a little bit deeper. Maybe the 6-4 chords have a doubling convention, but regardless, as you can see, we have a root position 7 chord here, as we've also had in other chorales, and the root is not doubled, so yeah, why not just not double the root? There's nothing wrong with that. So then we have G, B, G, and D. It's a tonic triad, G major in root position, passing tone in the tenor, and then we have a cadence on 5. A very active measure here with analyzable sonorities on every beat except for 4 and. That's pretty rare. And then we're getting ready for our final cadence, and okay, I'll spoil it. I was not going to spoil it, but if you look at the chords here, we have C major, C, C, E, and G, and then we have G major. So that's not 5 going to 1, that's 4 going to 1. This is the first cadence we've had at the end that is not, this is the first time we've seen a piece end with a plagal cadence, which is really fascinating. Definitely a byproduct of this being a modal melody for sure. And Bach is honoring that. He knows that this is an older style, and his harmony has adapted to reflect the style. Okay, we have B, D, D, and G. Another tonic triad, but this time it's in first inversion. Some passing tones in the alto and the bass. G, B, F, and G. That is a G7 chord. And we know that that would be a dominant of 4, because G is the dominant of C. We would expect a C chord immediately after that. C, G, E, and G. That's a root position C major triad. That gets turned into first inversion here. Passing tone in the bass. Then we get C, C, E, and G. Gets turned back to root position. And then we cadence on 1. G, B, D, and G. That final cadence, kind of crazy. The fact that we're ending on a plagal cadence, it's like a chorale from a different time. All in all, yeah, this chorale was pretty easy to analyze. I'd say that this is one of the chorales that everything sort of fell into place, but even then there's like intricacies in here and lots of higher level formal thinking going on. Like the fact that he goes from G and then he cadences very abruptly in another key, continues that key, and then modulates back. We see the same thing happen at the beginning of the next phrase where the modulation occurs at the same point. And then he doesn't modulate back for the exact length of rhythmic time as he did in the first phrase. And then we get a plagal cadence at the end. We also have an instance of two of the same chords being used in two cadential contexts, one in perfect authentic cadence and one being used in a half cadence, which is really cool. I love when chorales have neat tricks like that that don't make the analysis convoluted, because this is a very solid analysis. I'm very confident in the way that it's presented. But yeah, all in all, I'm going to tuck this one into my back pocket as an example of a chorale that ends with a plagal cadence. I'm sure there are more of them, but this is the first one that I've encountered, so cool stuff. Okay, that was my analysis for today. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching the video. Thank you for continuing to support the channel, and I look forward to tomorrow's analysis. Take care.